There are probably 100 different reasons for the fall of the Roman Empire, ranging from barbarian invasion to lead poisoning in the water supply. Today, we're just going to focus on the top 7. As always, you should have your notebook open to the correct page. At the top, you should have the title of the notes. You should also draw a line about 2.5 inches from the left-hand side straight down. This will divide your notebook paper into 2 sections. Area A will be where the area you put the keywords in. Area C is where you'll take most of your notes, draw your little diagrams, bullet notes. And finally, Area B is where you'll do your reflections, summaries, or questions that you have for me. Today's lesson is going to cover Christianity, unemployment, inflation, military spending, urban decay, political corruption, and barbarian invasion. Some historians believe that Christianity produced dramatic changes in Roman society at the very time when pressure from barbarians was increasing. They argue that Christianity made its followers into pacifists, those who would oppose war, thus making it more difficult to defend Roman lands from barbarian attacks. They also suggest that church attracted many qualified leaders whose talents were needed to deal with the problems of the empire. Finally, these historians theorized that money that would normally maintain the empire were instead being used to build churches and monasteries. During the latter years of the Roman Empire, farming was done on large estates that were owned by wealthy men who used slave labor. A farmer who had to pay a workman could not produce goods as cheaply as a slave owner could. Therefore, slave owners could sell their crops for lower prices. As a result, many farmers could not compete with these low prices and sold or lost their farms. Thousands of these men filled the cities of the empire where there was not enough jobs to accommodate them. At one time, the empire was importing grain to feed more than 100,000 unemployed people in the city of Rome alone. Some historians believe that this contributed to the collapse of the empire. The Roman economy suffered from inflation, an increase in prices, beginning after the reign of Marcus Aurelius. Once the Romans stopped conquering new lands, the flow of gold into the Roman economy decreased. Yet much gold was being spent by Romans to pay for luxury items. This meant that there was less gold to use in coins. As the amount of gold used in coins decreased, the coins became less valuable. To make up for the loss in value, merchants raised the prices on goods they sold. Many people stopped using coins and began to barter, trading goods for goods rather than using money to get what they needed. Eventually, salaries had to be paid in food and clothing, and taxes were collected in fruits and vegetables. Some historians argue that this also helped lead to the collapse of the Roman Empire. Maintaining an army to defend the borders of the empire from barbarian attacks was a constant drain on the government. Military spending left few resources for other vital activities, such as providing public housing and maintaining the quality of public roads. In the latter years of the empire, frustrated Romans lost their desire to defend the empire. Thus, the government found it necessary to rely increasingly on hired soldiers, recruiting from the unemployed city mobs or foreign countries. Such an army was not only unreliable, but very expensive. Thus, the emperors were forced to raise taxes frequently, the majority of which were paid by businessmen and farmers, which hurt the economy. Wealthy Romans lived in a domus, or house, with marble walls, floors with intricate colored tiles, and windows made of small panes of glass. Most Romans, however, were not rich. They lived in small, smelly rooms in apartment houses with 6 or more stories, called islands. These islands covered an entire block. At one time, there were over 44,000 apartment houses within the city walls of Rome. First floor apartments were not occupied by the poor, since these living quarters were rented for about $400 a year. The more shaky wooden stairs a family had to climb, the cheaper the rent became. The upper apartments that the poor rented for about $40 a year were hot, dirty, crowded, and dangerous. Anyone who could not pay rent was forced to move out and live on the crime-infested streets. Because of this, cities began to decay. One of Rome's most serious problems was the difficulty of choosing new emperors. The Romans never created an effective system to determine how new emperors would be selected. For this reason, the choice of a new emperor was always open to debate between the old emperor, the Senate, and the Praetorian Guard, the emperor's private army, and the army. Gradually, the Praetorian Guard gained complete authority to choose the new emperor. In return, the new emperor handsomely rewarded the Guard for its support. This system worked well for a time. Beginning in about 186 AD, however, when the army strangled the new emperor, the practice began of selling the throne to the highest bidder. During the next 100 years, Rome had 37 different emperors, 25 of whom were removed from office by assassination. For years, the well-disciplined Roman army held the barbarians of Germany in check. However, when the Roman soldiers were withdrawn from the Rhine/Danube frontier in the 3rd century to fight civil wars in Italy, the Roman border was left open to attack. Gradually, Germanic hunters and herders from northern and central Europe began to raid and take over Roman lands in Greece and Gaul. In 476, the Germanic general Odovacer overthrew the last of the Roman emperors and made himself ruler of all Italy. From then on, the western part of the Roman Empire was ruled by Germanic tribal chiefs. Roads and bridges were left in disrepair, and many fields were left untilled. Pirates and bandits made travel unsafe. Cities declined, and trade and businesses began to disappear. This concludes our discussion of the fall of the Roman Empire. We talked about topics such as Christianity, unemployment, inflation, military spending, urban decay, political corruption, and barbarian invasion. Here we are at the bottom of our notes. This is the summary section. This is where you need to go back and read through your notes and create some sort of connection. So the response is going to ask you to either summarize or draw some graphics or even come up with some questions that might show up on a test or questions you might want to ask me. You want to do this at the bottom of every note page.